This holiday, Verizon is giving you incredible gifts and savings you'll enjoy all year. When you switch, you'll get 4 new iPhone 17 Pros. No trade-in needed. That's right. Get 4 lines for just $25 a line and the amazing iPhone 17 Pro for everyone. Save big this holiday. Visit Verizon today. $20 monthly promo credits applied to account over 35 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G and 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply for phone offer. See Verizon.com for details.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. You know, one of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. Mm-hmm. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Hello and welcome to mini episode number 490 of Real Life Ghost Stories, and I have one spooky story for you today, and our story comes from the 30th of September 2025, and our story today comes from Kelsey. I have 2 stories that I'd like to share. One is mine and the other is my daughter's. But first, a little information that may be helpful. My family has always been sensitive to the paranormal. I have seen and heard things since I was a little girl, and I believe in everything from ghosts and ghouls to cryptids and aliens. Don't worry, aliens scare me as much as they scare you. Most things I experience don't bother me, but there is one experience, which happens to be the one I'm going to tell you today, that completely terrified me and has left scars on my soul that I don't think will ever go away. I apologise, this is a long one, and I want to give a trigger warning for domestic violence and miscarriage in this first story, so please skip ahead if it triggers you. From a young age, I've always seen things that I cannot understand, but one thing in particular seemed to follow me no matter where I went. The only way I can describe it is a dark mass that lingered in the darkness. I would find unnatural handprints on my windows whenever I saw it, which at first I thought was someone else placing them there, until I tried to wash them away and found that they were on the outside of the window. This thing was always there, but it became easy to ignore after a few years. I refused to acknowledge it, and it always stayed in the shadows. I thought it would go away, but unfortunately I was wrong. I was 18 years old when this thing evolved from silently watching to something more physical. It was my first year of college and I was majoring in psychology. I had moved into my on-campus dorm with 3 roommates and was so excited to start taking classes. Within a week, I had made tons of new friends and even met a guy that I fell head over heels for. We became serious very quickly, and everything was great until it wasn't. A few months into our relationship, the honeymoon phase started to end, and his true colours came to light. A guy who was once kind and loving turned cruel and vindictive, starting small with occasional verbal abuse, quickly growing to physical abuse. With this being my first serious relationship, I thought it was normal and I stayed. My mental health declined and I withdrew from friends and family. Things got really bad when we found out I was pregnant. The physical abuse became extreme, until one night an argument escalated. I won't describe what happened, but I received some injuries to my stomach. I went back to my dorm room to get space from him and eventually fell asleep. Now, before this point in my life, this creature or entity I had been seeing was always out of reach, just watching me from the darkness. I've never gotten a full view of it, just a misty outline. This night was different. I now know that what I experienced could fall into the category of sleep paralysis or a night terror, but at the time I had no idea what was happening. I woke up and my body was frozen. I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, despite my best efforts to scream. I began panicking and looked towards my roommate, hoping that maybe she wasn't asleep and could help me. And that's when I saw it. In the closet next to my roommate's bed, this dark mass started to emerge from the darkness. At first, it looked like smoke in the shape of a person, but as it slowly started moving towards me, I could see it clearly. It was a solid form within the smoke. The body was skin and bones, but the skin wasn't skin. It was this black tar-like substance that seemed to drip off its body onto the floor. Its arms and legs were unnaturally long, and its face was featureless and hollow. It was terrifying, and seemed to be flooding the room with evil. I tried to look away, but my eyes kept going to its hands. I could see every detail of its hand. The fingers were so long and bony, and this black tar-like substance was hanging off the bones. The tips of the fingers were so pointed and dagger-looking. I couldn't look away from them. I kept trying to scream for help, but I kept choking on this stench of death and decay with every deep breath I inhaled. It seemed to slither towards me within this smoke, until it was on top of me. I could feel the pressure on my legs and its hands gently grazing across my stomach. It seemed to stare at me, this hollow face, almost daring me to stop him. I knew it wanted to hurt me, and then it did. I felt those bony dagger-like fingers rip into the skin on my stomach. I could feel its hands inside moving around as if it was searching for something inside of me. I felt the warm, sticky feeling of blood pooling around my body. The pain was excruciating, but I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I just cried and screamed on the inside until just as quickly as this thing appeared, it vanished, and I flew myself out of bed onto the floor screaming. This thing was gone, and I was crawling across the floor towards the door in an attempt to get as far away from my bed as I could. At this point, my roommate was wide awake and in a complete panic at my side. She flipped the light on, and once our eyes adjusted, the first thing we both saw was blood. I was taken to the hospital, where I found out that I had miscarried in my sleep. The doctor said that is where the blood and the pain came from, and I wasn't going to argue it. If I tried to explain what I thought had happened to me, I'd be seen as crazy. I mean, I thought I was crazy, and I experienced it. I explained what happened to my roommate, but she requested a new room that week, and I was left trying to figure out what had happened to me alone. I spoke with my psychology professor, who had a background in trauma therapy and phobias, but also dabbled in parapsychology. She was sympathetic to my experience, but she truly believed it was the result of trauma from domestic violence and stress. She said I was projecting my fears of losing my child into an entity rather than the abuse I was experiencing from my partner. Terrified of the alternative, I agreed with her and pushed the experience from my mind. Fast forward about a year and a half later, I had moved to an apartment with my boyfriend, yes, the same abusive dickhead, and things had gotten better. It wasn't perfect, and he still had a lot of anger issues that he was sorting out, but the physical violence had stopped. We were talking about marriage and what we would do after we graduated, the hopes and dreams of couples in love, when I found out that I was pregnant a second time. I thought that it would be a happy thing for us, but like most abusers, the same cycle started with him, and it resulted in another violent outburst, except this time I left him. I went to a friend's house near campus to hide for the night, and she helped me start planning to leave him and the school and go home to my family. I told her about the pregnancy and talked to her about doing it alone, away from here and away from him. We talked for hours until we both called it a night, and I went to sleep in the spare bedroom. I had almost forgotten about what happened the first time with this entity, so the idea of it happening again hadn't crossed my mind. But just like the first time, I woke up frozen and watched as this thing emerged from the shadows. I won't explain the details again, but it was just like the first time. The only difference is that when it finally disappeared and I sat up screaming, there was no blood. My friend rushed into the bedroom to find me completely terrified. I couldn't go back to sleep in that room, so I attempted to stand up and go into the living room with her when I passed out and hit my head. I woke up in the hospital with stitches on my forehead and my friends and my parents by my bed. I was told again that I had miscarried and that the loss of consciousness was due to internal bleeding. I thought I was going crazy, seeing this thing for a second time, and it happens to be the same night I miscarried a second baby. It wasn't until I started talking to my friend about what happened when my parents left the room that I knew I wasn't crazy. Because when she entered the room to see if I was okay, she smelled this horrible stench of death that I had smelled, and saw what looked like black smoke disappearing into the ceiling. She believed me, and I knew this thing was real. I moved back home with my parents, found a new job, and focused on myself. I caught up on lost time with my family who I had been avoiding for months due to the abuse. I reached out to old friends. I tried to find answers or an explanation to what I had experienced, but I found nothing, so I pushed it from my mind. About 2 years later, I got pregnant with my beautiful daughter. This time, the fear of the past came bubbling up, but I wasn't in a toxic relationship. I wasn't in school stressing about exams and grades, and I was in a positive place in my life. I thought that if this was a psychological thing, that I was in a healthy place mentally, and this thing wouldn't come back. I was dedicated to prenatal care and a healthy pregnancy. I went to every doctor's appointment where they told me my child was perfectly healthy and they had no concerns regarding my pregnancy. I was approaching my due date when the entity returned. I woke up and couldn't move. The hallway outside of my bedroom was pitch black, but I could see this dark, misty mass crawling on the wall towards me. It inched towards me, slithering across the floor, until again it was on top of me and I could feel the cold, bony fingers grazing my stomach. Except something was different this time. I wasn't scared. I was angry. I wasn't trying to scream for help. I was screaming at this thing. I was furious at this entity that it had the nerve to come back when I was doing so well. I was screaming, "This is my daughter and you cannot take her. She is mine. Leave." Over and over I screamed at it. I started to feel the familiar pain in my stomach as it started ripping through my skin. I continued screaming in my head, louder, and suddenly I was able to move. And I grabbed it. The atmosphere in the room shifted. The dark, oppressive feeling that was drowning me lifted, and I could feel the shock and what seemed like fear coming from this thing. I felt its sticky, wet skin in my hand as I held onto its arm that was trying to push into my stomach. And at that moment, I think it realised I had the power to hurt it back. In that same moment, as I looked up at the absent void where its eyes should be, it disappeared. Relieved but still terrified, I got out of bed and yelled for my mom and insisted we go to the emergency room. I feared the worst, but kept praying that my daughter was okay. Keep in mind, I'm not a religious person, but at this moment it seemed appropriate and I was praying. The hospital did tests and my OBGYN was called in due to some abnormal results. My daughter was fine. They did not find anything wrong with her, but there was one thing they found that the doctors had no explanation for. The week before this incident, I had a doctor's appointment to check on my daughter and everything was normal. My doctor even used the term textbook pregnancy. But the tests they ran at the hospital found that the umbilical cord, which is supposed to have 3 vessels, now only had 2. Within a week, one of the vessels had just disappeared. No one could explain how this happened, and normally that is something they notice fairly early in pregnancy since it can lead to some complications. Somehow, this vessel had just vanished. I know this story sounds completely insane, and honestly, if someone had told it to me, I would say that they were nuts. But I know this was real. I do not believe this was coincidence or sleep paralysis or a result of my trauma. I fully believe this thing, this entity was real and that it meant me and my child harm. I also believe that the love I had for my daughter stopped it from taking her that night. My daughter was born just 4 days after the entity tried to take her, and she was completely healthy and absolutely beautiful, and I have not seen this entity since. So I'm going to pause here before we go into the second part of the story, because there was a lot of darkness in that story, right? A huge amount of darkness. And there is no part of me, Kelsey, that is going to go, well, maybe it was this, maybe it was that, because you lived this and it must have been absolutely horrific. Miscarriage is horrendous in any capacity, and to then have this experience with this entity on top of that must have been, I don't even know. And I am so sorry that you experienced this. I really, really am. And I think I said this actually, I think it was the last episode that I was talking about this. I think that people who are abusive to their partners in relationships are full full to the brim of self-loathing, and it infects the world around them. And I think that extreme negativity and hatred allows darkness and negativity to thrive. And I'm just really sorry you experienced this in every capacity. I'm sorry that you were in a relationship with a man who was abusive. I'm sorry that you had this terrible experience of miscarrying twice and feeling as though you couldn't properly share that experience with anybody because, you know, you were kind of saying people were going to think that I was crazy. But knowing that friend smelled that stench of death and saw that black smoke disappearing into the ceiling, like I'm so glad for you that she saw that, so she was able to go, I hear you and I see you and I am validating you, and I am so glad that you now have your gorgeous, beautiful, healthy daughter. Today's episode is brought to you by Uncommon Goods. Uncommon Goods takes the stress out of gifting with thousands of unique, high-quality finds that you won't see anywhere else. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique and often handmade or made in the US. Many are crafted by independent artists and small businesses, making every gift feel meaningful and truly one of a kind. Now, I've been looking for gifts for the mixologists in my life, and I saw this handmade tequila shot set, which is an absolutely beautiful set of 6 ceramic shot glasses. They are truly unique, they are truly one of a kind, and they are handmade in Texas. And remember, every time you purchase with Uncommon Goods, they give back $1 to a non-profit partner of your choice, and they have donated more than $3.1 million to date. So don't wait. Cross those names off your list before the rush. To get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/ghoststories. That's uncommongoods.com/ghoststories for 15% off. Uncommon Goods. We're all out of the ordinary.
This holiday, Verizon is giving you incredible gifts and savings you'll enjoy all year. When you switch, you'll get 4 new iPhone 17 Pros. No trade-in needed. That's right. Get 4 lines for just $25 a line and the amazing iPhone 17 Pro for everyone. Save big this holiday. Visit Verizon today. $20 monthly promo credits applied to account over 35 months with a new line on unlimited welcome. In times of congestion, unlimited 5G and 4G LTE may be temporarily slower than other traffic. Domestic data roaming at 2G speeds. Additional terms apply for phone offer. See Verizon.com for details.
Hi, it's Paige DeSorbo from Giggly Squad. You ever stand in front of your closet and just say, I have nothing to wear, while you're literally surrounded by clothes? Because same. So I started listing pieces I'm over on Depop. And honestly, it's been amazing. You can sell what you're done with, and someone out there will love it. And the best part about it is there's no seller fee. So the money you make actually stays in your pocket, which feels very chic. It's also insanely easy. I listed something while watching TV, and it sold before the episode even ended. So download the Depop app and list your first item today, because your old outfit could be someone else's new favorite. Depop, where taste recognizes taste. Payment processing fees, boosting fees still apply. For more info, visit Depop.com. Hi, it's Paige DeSorbo from Giggly Squad. You ever stand in front of your closet and just say, I have nothing to wear, while you're literally surrounded by clothes? Because same. So I started listing pieces I'm over on Depop. And honestly, it's been amazing. You can sell what you're done with, and someone out there will love it. And the best part about it is there's no seller fee. So the money you make actually stays in your pocket, which feels very chic. It's also insanely easy. I listed something while watching TV, and it sold before the episode even ended. So download the Depop app and list your first item today, because your old outfit could be someone else's new favorite. Depop, where taste recognizes taste. Payment processing fees, boosting fees still apply. For more info, visit Depop.com.
Grief doesn't keep a calendar. Anxiety doesn't clock out after 5. Depression doesn't care if it's your busy season, but support can still fit into your life. With Grow, you can find a therapist who meets you where you are. They connect you with thousands of independent licensed therapists across the U.S., offering both virtual and in-person sessions. You can search by insurance, provider specialty, treatment methods, and more to find a therapist who works for you. And if it's not the right fit, switching is easy. There are no subscriptions, no long-term commitments. You just pay per session. Find therapy on your time. evenings, weekends, and cancel up to 24 hours in advance at no cost. Whatever challenges you're facing, Grow Therapy is here to help. Sessions average about $21 with insurance, and some pay as little as $0 depending on their plan. Visit growtherapy.com/ACAST today to get started. That's growtherapy.com/ACAST. growtherapy.com/ACAST. Availability and coverage vary by state and insurance plan.
Now to fulfill the promise I made to that beautiful daughter of mine. Her story is not as terrifying as mine, but still qualifies her as a creepy kid for sure. Most kids have imaginary friends, especially when they are an only child. It is a normal thing to want a friend they can play with and help ease the loneliness they may feel. That's what I thought this was, a child's imagination. But boy, was I wrong. My daughter started talking about her friend when she was around 3 years old. It started simple, with her playing in her room with someone no one else could see, insisting that I took her and her friend into bed together and kissed them both goodnight. She would play for hours with this friend who she called Sister. My parents and myself, who we were living with, didn't think much of this. I'd lived in this house almost my whole life, and sure, I had seen many things, but nothing that I would perceive as harmful, and this was just my daughter's imagination. Except Sister didn't start to fade the older she got. In fact, it was the opposite. She started getting more and more prominent. And we started to notice things around the house that we could not explain. Toys would move on their own. Things would go missing only to be found days later in a random place. Even toys that had batteries taken out of them would make noise in the night. I had to buy 2 car seats, one for my daughter and one for Sister, or else my daughter would refuse to go anywhere in the car. I had to make 2 plates of food when she ate and buy 2 toys at the store, so Sister had something to play with too. Sister was always with us. It became pretty ridiculous, and I wanted to talk to my daughter about it. Not to make her forget her imaginary friend, but maybe to help her realise that she wasn't a real person. That imaginary friends don't need car seats and food. The first time I talked to her about Sister, I just wanted to ask her questions to better understand where she was coming up with this stuff. So, honey, what does Sister look like? She's little, like me, with yellow hair and black eyes. This was a little unnerving. The yellow hair was a normal response I would expect from a 4-year-old, but the black eyes was not. Does Sister have a name? No, she's just Sister. I tried asking more questions, but she stopped answering and just shrugged her shoulders until she said, Sister doesn't want us to talk anymore. She wants to play. And she got up and left for her room. I stared at her while she played with Sister, and I decided to just accept the fact that Sister was going to be something in our lives until she wasn't. This brings us to her 5th birthday party. We decided to have a big pink party in the backyard with family and friends. My daughter was running around and playing with the kids until the end of the party. She started getting angry at one of the kids that was there. She'd been playing all day with her, but now my daughter was mad and crying. I guess she said something about Sister not being real because she couldn't see her. This made my daughter very sad, and according to my daughter, it made Sister very sad. My daughter said she wanted everyone to leave because they made Sister sad. So they did. The party was over and everyone left, and I decided it was time to try and have another conversation with my daughter about Sister. My mom and dad followed us into the house and I started to talk to her. Honey, you know not everyone can see Sister, right? She doesn't want you to, Mommy. She is sad right now. I'm sorry she's sad. Where is she right now? And I'll tell her it's okay. I mostly did this out of habit, kind of like when a stuffed animal gets hurt and your child expects you to give it love to feel better. My daughter pointed at the window to the house across the street. She went home. She's very sad. Across the street from our house was a very old white house built in the late 1800s. To give some perspective, the house my parents owned that we were living in at the time was built in 1816, so there is a lot of history there. My daughter, still slightly crying, wiped her cheek and looked at me in the eye and said, "She died there, Mommy." I about crawled out of my skin. My daughter had no understanding of death at this age. In fact, the first person she ever knew that died was 3 years after all of this happened. There was no way she could have come up with that on her own. Honey, what do you mean she died there? She fell into a hole, and when she finally got out, her mommy and daddy were gone. My mom at this moment was pale and white and shaking. Who told you that? Sister did, Mommy. She comes and plays with me because we are nice. We were all speechless listening to this, and my mom, still pale white, started walking to the kitchen. I just gave my daughter a hug and a kiss on the forehead and walked to my mom. It took my mom a few minutes to actually start talking. She just stared at the kitchen window towards the house. What she told me next still gives me chills when I think about it. Apparently there were a family that lived next door, with a little girl around 4 or 5 years old in the 1970s. They were fixing a sewage tank in the backyard and the top had been taken off, leaving a very large hole exposed. I guess the little girl went over not knowing there was a hole and fell in and drowned. This devastated the family and they couldn't stay in the house, so they moved away shortly after the funeral. I tried researching this, but I could not find anything in our area about this happening. But I have talked to several people in our town and they all remember this story and how sad it was for that little girl to have died like that. But what makes this even creepier is that my mom told me when I was about the same age as my daughter, I would play with the same little girl that no one else could see from across the street. My daughter is 8 years old now and still talks about seeing sister when she visits my parents' house and still describes her the same way. A little girl with blonde hair and black eyes. Okay, well, Kelsey, you started this off by saying it is not as terrifying as your story, but this story is particularly terrifying because sister is terrifying, your daughter is terrifying and deserves to be drop-kicked straight down the stairs or straight out a window. Just to say, if you're listening for the first time, I don't condone any violence against children. It is a joke. Please don't start sending me messages berating me for encouraging people to be violent against children. And this obviously, based on the end of your story, isn't unique to your daughter. Like, you experienced this little girl too. Oh, your mom must have been like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Because she, how terrifying to have witnessed it in 2 generations and then go, there was a little girl, she drowned in a sewage tank. That really did happen. I mean, this is the thing, right? It kind of, in a way, I really like the fact, I don't know how to say it. There's something in the fact that kids seem to be able to see entities and they just sort of accept it. Especially when it's small kids, they accept it as and we accept it as an imaginary friend, but they kind of go, yeah, this just is what it is. Which I guess if you're a child who has died, it must be amazing to have somebody to play with. I don't know, I'm trying to find positive in this, but it also makes me really sad to think that you're a child that has died and you're still knocking around waiting for another child to play with. And that description of her death being she fell in a hole and when she got out her mommy and daddy were gone, that made me want to crawl into a hole and just sob. Because of course, when you're 4 years old, when you're little, your family are your whole world. Your mommy and daddy are your whole world. So that's I suppose all that you'd really consider of your own death would be, well, my mum and dad weren't there anymore. And what do you do? How do you encourage ghosts to move on? And is it our place to do that? Maybe that's something that happens at the right time, like in the series Ghosts. Maybe it just happens that whenever your time is, you get taken off elsewhere, whatever that means. If it's a case where it's like a residual energy, the echo of a ghost doing the things that it did when it was alive, I'm kind of okay with that. But when it's the ghost of a child and it's not anything sinister and that it is just an actual child who died, I just think, oh, I wish you were somewhere else. I don't know where that else is, but I wish you were somewhere where you were, not waiting for a living child to play with and that you were happy. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Thank you to Kelsey for sending in your stories. Remember, Kelsey's stories Kelsey sent in her stories on the 30th of September 2025. And just to say, this episode has been pretty heavy at the beginning, and I really respect Kelsey for sending in that story. And I just wanted to say, if there's anything in that story that you can resonate with, like there are people that you can talk to. I think often the first step, particularly in abusive relationships, whether they're emotionally abusive or physically abusive, the first step is often to start being honest with the people in your life about what's going on for you. That can be a really powerful thing. And there are so many charities out there that are designed to help with domestic violence and domestic abuse in any capacity. Equally, if you are somebody who has experienced miscarriage, for some reason, miscarriage is often something that people don't talk about, where it happens and people go, well, it happened and I need to get on with it and not talk about it. It can be absolutely devastating for people for myriad reasons. There are people online that you can talk to. There are charities as well that you can talk to about your experiences of miscarriage if you feel as though you need to do that. And if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website, reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or for $2 a month, you can get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
So good, so good, so good.
Score holiday gifts everyone wants for way less at your Nordstrom Rack store. Save on UGG, Nike, Rag & Bone, Vince, Frame, Kurt Geiger London, and more.
Because there's always something new.
I'm giving all the gifts this year with that extra 5% off when I use my Nordstrom credit card. Santa who?
Join the Nordy Club at Nordstrom Rack to unlock our best deals. It's easy. Big gifts, big perks. That's why you rack.